Welcome to our kitchen. Today we prepare medieval savory pancakes with flowers and fresh herbs. We start with ingredients. We need white wheat flour, eggs, onions, cured pork fatback and olive oil. And then the fresh herbs and the flowers. Mint, lesser calamint, parsley, elderflowers and borage flowers. The author of this recipe specifies to use elderflowers, but you can use any edible flower you have at disposal. You can use, for example, thyme or savory, as well as mint, oregano, or even rose flowers, depending on your taste and their availability. Borage was widely used as a vegetable since antiquity, and its flowers appear frequently in the Renaissance cookbooks to decorate the plates. Michele Savonarola in the 14th century writes that borage makes good blood and helps melancholic humors. Elderflowers are frequently used in the medieval and Renaissance cookbooks to prepare soups, fritters, or even cheesecakes. Last year we prepared the Renaissance elderflowers fritters. You find the link in the description below. First, we mix the flour with a bit of sourdough, warm water and egg whites. We must reach the consistency of a rather liquid batter. We use 2 egg whites, about 150 grams of flour, and enough water to reach the right consistency. The author specifies to use white flour, the most common kind of flour since antiquity. The author doesn't specify which kind of leavener to use, just to use levame, which means yeast. Most part of the medical medieval handbooks mention yeast without specifying how to make it. From other sources, for example, the Antidotarium written in the 13th century by an Italian physician called Pseudo-Mesue or Mesue the Young, we find out that he considers better the leavener produced from the flour itself, which means sourdough, in contrast with the yeast obtained from grape must. Whereas there are no sourdough recipes in the medieval Italian cookbooks, there are a few recipes written by Pliny the Elder, whose Naturalis Historia was well known during the Middle Ages. The use of grape must as a leavener is testified also by the Byzantine agricultural book Geoponics, collected around the 10th century, not to consider the diffusion of Palladius' book in the Middle Ages, in which we find the same recipe to make grape yeast. You find 2 methods to prepare ancient yeast in the description below. We let the batter rest for a few hours. There is no need to let it rise completely, as we would do with bread. The author writes to let it leaven just a little. Meanwhile, we mince the onions and fresh herbs. In the Middle Ages, there were different kinds of onions, round or elongated, white or red. We find information in the medical handbooks, included Savonarola's, and in the agricultural book written by Pietro de Crescenzi. The author of this recipe recommends using lesser calamint and other fresh herbs. If you don't have lesser calamint, substitute it with mint or other herbs. Savory, oregano, marjoram, parsley, fennel, thyme and mint were among the most used aromatic herbs in the Middle Ages. According to Savonarola, parsley and mint are particularly good for the digestion. and mint, one of the most common herbs also in ancient Roman cuisine, stimulates the appetite and calms the hiccups. We pour the olive oil in a pan, and when it's hot, we add the onions. The author recommends using olive oil or cured pork fatback to fry the onions. We prefer the olive oil, being the pancakes fried in pork fatback. The author suggests coloring the fritters in the way we want. The most common colors for food, other than white, were yellow and green. To obtain yellow, add saffron. For green, pound in the mortar a good quantity of aromatic herbs and sift the juice, adding it to the mixture. We prefer the natural mixed color given by the herbs and the flowers. We fry the onions for a couple of minutes, then we add the fresh herbs and 2 pinches of salt. We stir and cook for a few seconds. When the batter leavened, we add the flowers and the fried onions and fresh herbs. Paying attention that they have cooled, and mix gently. There are 3 recipes of frittelle ubaldine or crispelli in this cookbook. A 14th century manuscript conventionally called Anonimo Toscano. In another recipe the author writes to add a little yeast. In the other to leaven the pancakes for a short time. Since many recipes survived, we guess that crispelli were a very popular dish in the Middle Ages and Renaissance. In other cookbooks, for example Anonimo Meridionale, a manuscript written around the same period, we find the advice to dilute with water the dough, and other texts suggest a quite liquid consistency. We let the batter rest for at least half an hour. Meanwhile, we finely mince the cured pork fatback. If you want that the cured pork fatback melts completely, pound it in the mortar after having minced it. But it is not necessary for a good outcome of the recipe. Little pieces of fried pork fatback will give an extraordinary aroma to the pancakes. We melt the pork fatback, then add 1 ladle of the batter. Cured pork fatback was one of the most common cooking fats in the Middle Ages, used during the fat days, which means the days in which people were allowed to eat meat, eggs, and milk. This is a recipe for the fat days, but if you prefer, substitute the cured pork fatback with olive oil. We cook the frittelle ubaldine for 2 minutes, then we flip and cook them for about 1 minute. We suggest serving them still hot. These flavorful crispelli are the perfect way to try one of the most common dishes served in a medieval banquet, fragrant with spring aromatic herbs and colored with flowers. If you're interested in ancient foods and flavors, or you're just looking for unusual and delicious recipes, please subscribe our channel.